She woke up before sunrise, as she did every morning, the sound of her alarm pulling her from a deep sleep that had come only a few hours after she had finally finished her homework and language exercises. Living in a small, modest apartment above a row of shops, the city's early morning noises became part of her life, the distant hum of traffic and the occasional shout blending with the birds chirping. She stretched, trying to shake off the grogginess, but her mind was already running through the long list of tasks waiting for her at the café. She had been working there for a little over a year. It wasn't a glamorous job by any means, and the pay was far from enough to let her live comfortably, but it gave her a sense of independence she cherished. She didn't have the luxury to rely on anyone else, and she took pride in being able to cover her own expenses. Even if her uniform was slightly worn and the tips were modest, she approached her work with dedication. The café was a small place tucked into a busy street corner, popular among locals who appreciated the warm atmosphere and home-cooked pastries. She loved the smells that greeted her each morning, the roasted coffee beans, the buttery aroma of croissants, and the faint hint of vanilla from the freshly baked cakes. Her mornings were always a blur of preparation. She quickly showered, dressed in her crisp uniform, and tied her hair back neatly. She checked her bag, making sure she had her notebook and pen for jotting down orders, along with a small Italian phrasebook she often referenced. She had been teaching herself Italian for months now, fascinated by the rhythm and beauty of the language. It was more than a hobby. It felt like a secret superpower she carried quietly, practicing whenever she had a moment to spare. Some days she whispered the words to herself while wiping tables or arranging chairs, blending her language practice with her daily chores. As she left her apartment and stepped onto the busy street, she greeted the few early risers she knew by name. The butcher who always smiled despite his rough exterior, the elderly woman who sold flowers from a tiny cart, her hands rough from years of work, and the delivery boy who seemed permanently tired but cheerful. These little interactions were like threads in the fabric of her mornings, grounding her as she walked the few blocks to the café. The café was already starting to wake up. The smell of coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of pastries baking in the oven. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and took a deep breath. There was something comforting about this routine, even if it was exhausting. She began arranging the tables, making sure the chairs were perfectly aligned, wiping down every surface, and checking that the napkins and condiments were neatly placed. Every detail mattered to her. She believed that even small acts of care could make someone's day better, and she wanted every customer who walked in to feel noticed, respected, and comfortable. The first customers trickled in, mostly regulars who exchanged friendly greetings with her. She remembered their usual orders without looking at her notebook, smiling as she brought their coffee and pastries to the table. Some of them would engage in light conversation, asking how her day was going or commenting on the weather, and she responded politely, her tone warm but efficient. She had learned to balance friendliness with professionalism, knowing that her role required both patience and composure. Her mind, however, often wandered back to her Italian studies. She imagined herself speaking fluently, traveling to Italy, and experiencing a world far beyond the café's familiar walls. It was a dream that felt both distant and tangible, a source of motivation that carried her through long shifts and tiring days. She practiced silently, mouthing sentences under her breath while refilling sugar containers or pouring coffee. Sometimes, she imagined a scenario where she could use the language unexpectedly, and the thought brought a small, private smile to her face. The lunch rush was always the busiest part of her day. Orders came quickly, and the café buzzed with activity. She moved swiftly, taking orders, serving food, and making sure every customer felt attended to. Her coworkers depended on her energy and organization, and she prided herself on being reliable. There was satisfaction in the rhythm of work, even if her body ached by the end of the day. She had grown used to the physical demands, the constant motion, and the need to keep a sharp mind while juggling multiple tasks. Despite the challenges, she found joy in small victories. A customer complimenting a perfectly brewed cappuccino, a colleague thanking her for lending a hand, or a difficult order successfully delivered without error. These moments reinforced her sense of purpose. She reminded herself that even if her life seemed ordinary, these small achievements mattered. They were proof of her capability, her attention to detail, and her resilience. Her personal life was quiet. She had few close friends, partly because her schedule left little room for socializing, and partly because she valued solitude and reflection. She spent evenings reading, practicing Italian, and planning ways to improve her skills. She dreamed of experiences beyond her current reality but remained grounded, knowing that progress often came slowly. Each day was a stepping stone, each effort a brick in the foundation of her aspirations. One afternoon, as she was rearranging tables and wiping surfaces, she noticed a well-dressed man walking into the café. There was something striking about him, not just his clothes, which were clearly expensive, but the air of authority and confidence he carried. He was accompanied by a few assistants, each carrying folders and smartphones, moving with a precision that suggested urgency. The café seemed to quiet slightly as he entered, the usual chatter dimming in the presence of someone so commanding. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. It wasn't unusual for notable people to visit the café, but something about this man felt different. He was the kind of person who could make or break someone's day with a single word, and she felt a mix of nerves and curiosity. She reminded herself to stay professional, to focus on her role, and to treat him like any other customer. Yet, part of her mind couldn't help but imagine the possibility of what it might mean to catch the attention of someone so influential. As she approached the table, her heart beat a little faster. The man looked up, his gaze sharp but not unkind. She greeted him politely, taking note of his order with precision. She felt the usual nerves of serving a high-profile customer but tried to channel them into focus. She wanted to make a good impression, not just because of who he was, but because she took pride in doing her job well. It was a test of her abilities, a chance to show that competence, dedication, and poise mattered just as much as wealth or status. Throughout the interaction, she remained attentive, responding promptly to questions and requests. She noticed the subtle gestures of appreciation, a nod, a brief smile, that made her feel seen despite the formality. Inside, she also felt a surge of confidence, a quiet affirmation that her skills and personality could leave an impact beyond the ordinary tasks of daily life. She was aware that this moment could be small in the grand scheme of things, yet it felt significant, a moment where preparation, dedication, and chance converged. As the lunch service progressed, she moved with precision and care, balancing efficiency with warmth. She poured coffee, refilled water glasses, and ensured that the table was perfectly set. Her coworkers watched in quiet admiration, noting how she handled the pressure with grace. She didn't seek recognition. The satisfaction came from knowing she had done her best, that her actions had contributed to a positive experience. By the end of the shift, exhaustion settled into her muscles, but there was also a quiet pride. She had navigated a challenging day, served demanding customers with patience, and maintained her composure even under scrutiny. She cleaned up the café, restocked supplies, and locked the doors, reflecting on the moments of the day. Each encounter, each decision, and each small success felt like a step forward, reinforcing her belief in herself and her abilities. Walking home in the soft glow of the evening, she felt the familiar mix of fatigue and anticipation. The city lights shimmered on wet pavement from a brief rain shower, and the distant hum of traffic provided a steady background to her thoughts. She thought about the day, the interactions, and the possibilities that might lie ahead. She carried with her the sense of purpose and determination that had guided her through countless mornings, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she paused to look out over the street below. The world seemed vast and full of potential, yet intimately connected to her efforts, her dreams, and her choices. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the spark of hope. The routine of her life, the discipline, and the quiet ambitions formed the foundation for something greater, though she didn't yet know what shape it would take. That night, she sat at her small desk, opening her Italian phrasebook and practicing the words she had learned. The sentences rolled off her tongue with increasing confidence, the rhythm and melody of the language filling the room. She imagined herself speaking fluently, traveling, experiencing, and connecting with a world beyond her immediate surroundings. Each word was a step toward her dream, a reminder that effort, patience, and belief in oneself could change the course of a life. Sleep eventually claimed her, but her mind remained alive with possibilities. She dreamed not just of Italian cities or luxurious experiences, but of moments where preparation and opportunity would intersect. She dreamed of recognition, respect, and the chance to show that her talents, dedication, and courage were worth noticing. And as the city continued its quiet slumber, she rested with the knowledge that tomorrow would bring another day to move closer to the life she imagined. A life that might soon surpass even her wildest expectations. The next morning, the cafe buzzed with the usual activity. The smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans filled the air, comforting and familiar. She arrived early, as she always did, taking a moment to straighten her uniform and run a hand through her hair before stepping behind the counter. She checked the order tickets, made sure the tables were spotless, and arranged the pastries just right. She loved the way the warm light hit the polished surfaces, the way the aroma seemed to pull people in from the street. The bell above the door jingled, and a small group of regulars came in, greeting her warmly. She smiled back, taking their orders with practiced ease, adding a gentle touch to each cup of coffee, each plate of food. Yet, amid the usual rhythm, there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Something in the air felt different today. She couldn't place it at first, but a sense of expectation hovered over the cafe, like the calm before a storm. It wasn't long before the sound of sleek, expensive shoes on the wooden floor announced the arrival of a notable figure. She looked up and immediately recognized him, the billionaire CEO who had become somewhat of a legend in the city. His presence was magnetic, drawing the attention of everyone around him. He walked with a quiet confidence, his eyes sharp, surveying the cafe as if taking stock of everything at once. He was accompanied by a small team, people moving efficiently around him, carrying devices and papers, their demeanor all business. She felt a flutter of nerves but pushed it aside, reminding herself to stay focused. She had learned to manage stress with poise, and today was no different. She moved toward his table with measured steps, greeting him politely, her voice calm despite the rapid beat of her heart. The CEO looked up, a brief smile playing across his face, acknowledging her presence. It was a small gesture, but it gave her a sense of reassurance. The table had several items on it already, and she carefully asked if they needed anything more. He spoke briefly with his team, then reached for his phone. At that exact moment, a call came in. The phone rang loudly, drawing attention. Her instincts took over, and she gently asked if she could assist. When he nodded, she picked up the phone, her voice polite and confident, and said a few words in Italian. The cafe fell silent. She hadn't expected anyone else to understand her words, but now the CEO and his team were listening intently. The words came smoothly from her lips, perfectly clear, her tone professional yet warm. He looked at her, surprise and admiration mingling in his expression. It wasn't just the language. It was the confidence, the ease with which she handled a potentially tense situation. She felt a surge of pride but stayed composed, continuing to assist as needed. Her co-workers watched in astonishment. They had known she was learning Italian, but none of them had expected her to use it so effortlessly, and certainly not in front of someone of such high status. There was a hush among the staff, a shared recognition that something unusual was happening. For a moment, the ordinary life of the cafe felt as if it had been lifted into a different world, one where opportunities seemed tangible, just out of reach but within sight. The CEO finished the call and set his phone down. He spoke to his assistants briefly, then turned his gaze back to her. There was a curiosity in his eyes, a spark that seemed to say he wanted to know more. She maintained eye contact, her hands steady as she poured water and served pastries, answering questions and ensuring everything was perfect. The conversation was polite but charged with a subtle energy. Every word, every gesture seemed to carry more weight than usual. As she moved to refill coffee cups, she noticed him observing her, the way she handled herself, the care she put into each task. He asked her a few questions, light and friendly, and she responded clearly, with honesty and charm. It was a delicate balance, keeping her professionalism intact while allowing her personality to shine through. She felt a quiet confidence growing within her, a sense that she was being seen for who she truly was, not just as a waitress but as a capable, intelligent person. The lunch crowd came and went, but the CEO's table remained engaged. They discussed matters in soft tones, occasionally glancing at her as she moved around the café. She felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement, aware that this encounter could change everything. The ordinary routine of her day had been transformed by this unexpected interaction, and she savored the moment without losing focus on her responsibilities. Her Italian had been more than just a language. It had become a bridge. The CEO's admiration was evident, not just for her skill, but for the initiative, courage, and grace she displayed. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her months of practice and dedication had paid off in a tangible way. It wasn't just luck or chance. It was preparation meeting opportunity, a lesson she had learned long ago and was now seeing in action. By the end of the lunch service, the cafe had returned to its usual rhythm. The CEO and his team prepared to leave, and he called her over. She approached cautiously, unsure what to expect. He smiled warmly and thanked her personally, commenting on her language skills and composure. The words were simple but carried significant weight, leaving her with a sense of pride and validation. Her efforts, often unnoticed by the regular crowd, had been recognized in a way that mattered deeply. She watched as they left, her mind racing. The encounter had opened a door she hadn't even realized existed. It wasn't just about recognition or praise. It was about possibilities. She could see a path forward, a chance to experience life beyond the cafe, to use her skills in ways she had only dreamed of. The thought was exhilarating and frightening all at once, but she knew she was ready to face it. After the cafe closed, she cleaned up the remaining tables and restocked supplies, her movements automatic but her mind alive with reflection. She thought about how quickly life could change, how a single moment of confidence and preparation could capture someone's attention in a way that opened new doors. She considered all the months of practice, the early mornings, the quiet determination to improve herself, and realized that each effort had been leading to this point. That evening, she sat by her small window, the city lights twinkling below, and replayed the events of the day in her mind. She thought about the CEO, the unexpected call, and her ability to respond in Italian without hesitation. She considered what it meant to be recognized for her skills, to have someone see her potential beyond her current circumstances. It was a validation of her dedication, her patience, and her willingness to push herself beyond what was easy or comfortable. As she practiced her Italian once more, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that this encounter was only the beginning, that opportunities might arise from unexpected moments, and that her ability to stay composed, confident, and prepared would be crucial. She imagined the conversations, the travel, the chance to grow in ways she had only dreamed of. It was a world that had seemed distant but now felt within reach. She reflected on her ordinary life and how it had prepared her for extraordinary moments. Every shift, every interaction, every act of care had contributed to her readiness. She realized that life often rewards those who quietly work on themselves, who prepare without fanfare, who maintain hope and determination even when circumstances seem limiting. She felt gratitude for the challenges, for the mundane routines, and for the skills she had developed that allowed her to shine when the moment came. As night fell and the city quieted, she prepared for sleep with a sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps another chance to impress, to grow, and to embrace opportunities. She felt a mixture of excitement and calm, knowing that her life was on the cusp of change. The ordinary cafe, the early mornings, the language lessons, all of it had led to this point, and she was ready to step forward into whatever came next. Her thoughts lingered on the CEO, the unexpected call, and the way she had handled herself. She realized that confidence, skill, and composure could make a lasting impression, even in a brief encounter. She thought about the possibilities that lay ahead and allowed herself to dream freely, imagining the experiences, adventures, and growth that might come from this new path. She fell asleep with a heart full of hope, ready for the day that awaited her, unaware that her life was about to take a dramatic and exciting turn. The following morning, she arrived at the café feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. The events of the previous day played over and over in her mind, each memory bright and vivid. She remembered how she had answered the CEO's call in Italian, the way he had watched her, and the subtle nod of approval that had made her chest swell with pride. Even though the café looked the same, felt the same, she sensed that something had changed, that the world outside her small routines might suddenly be larger, more open, and full of possibilities. As she prepared the café for the day, arranging the tables and checking that every cup, plate, and napkin was in place, she noticed her coworkers casting curious glances her way. They had heard about her interaction with the billionaire CEO, and whispers circulated quietly around the room. Some were skeptical, while others seemed genuinely impressed. She didn't mind the attention. It reminded her that moments of opportunity could ripple through even the most ordinary of lives. She focused on her tasks, but a small smile played on her lips as she thought about the extraordinary nature of yesterday's events. The lunch rush began as usual, and the café quickly filled with its familiar crowd of regulars. Orders came in fast and furious, and she moved with the same practiced efficiency that had always defined her work. Yet beneath the familiar rhythm, she felt a subtle difference. There was a lightness in her steps, a confidence in her actions. She knew she had proven herself capable, not only to her colleagues and customers, but to someone whose recognition could change the course of her life. She carried that knowledge quietly, letting it inform her every movement. Then, as if the universe had aligned perfectly, the bell above the door jingled once more, and the CEO stepped in. He arrived without the entourage this time, a subtle smile on his face. She felt a flutter of nerves and anticipation, yet she remained composed. She approached his table with grace, greeting him politely. He returned her greeting warmly, and she noticed a spark of curiosity in his eyes. It was clear that he remembered her, and that yesterday's interaction had left an impression. He spoke casually, asking about her day and how long she had been learning Italian. She answered honestly, her voice steady and confident. She explained that it was a passion of hers, something she practiced whenever she could. He listened intently, clearly interested in more than just the mechanics of her language skills. There was a depth in his gaze, a recognition that she was someone with intelligence, dedication, and potential. She felt a sense of validation wash over her, knowing that her efforts had not gone unnoticed. During the meal, he asked a few more questions, probing gently but thoughtfully, wanting to understand her story, her motivations, and her ambitions. She responded openly, sharing her experiences, her challenges, and her dreams. He nodded, listening carefully, occasionally commenting with curiosity and admiration. The conversation was informal yet meaningful, a bridge forming between two very different worlds. She realized that her poise, honesty, and willingness to express herself authentically were just as impressive as her language skills. Throughout the interaction, she maintained her usual professionalism, attending to his needs without hesitation while simultaneously engaging in conversation. She poured water, replenished bread, and ensured that the table remained neat and inviting. Every gesture was deliberate, a mix of efficiency and attentiveness that reflected her dedication to excellence. The CEO noticed it all, appreciating the subtle balance of competence and charm. Her coworkers watched in quiet awe from the background, noting how she navigated the situation with grace and ease. They had seen her grow over the past year, honing her skills, learning languages, and striving to better herself. But today, it was evident that she had stepped into a different realm, where talent and preparation could intersect with opportunity in a life-changing way. They exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that this moment was extraordinary. As the conversation continued, he suggested that she consider using her language skills in broader contexts, hinting at possibilities that extended beyond the cafe. She listened intently, absorbing his words with a mix of wonder and determination. The idea of expanding her horizons, of experiencing life beyond the familiar streets and routine shifts, sparked a flame within her. She felt a growing awareness that her life could take a different trajectory, one she had only dared to dream about. He then asked if she would be interested in joining him for a short trip to a nearby city for a business engagement, a chance to see the workings of a world she had never experienced firsthand. Her heart raced, and she paused for a moment, considering the opportunity. It was unexpected, bold, and entirely outside her comfort zone. But the excitement outweighed the fear. She nodded, a mixture of nervousness and anticipation evident on her face. He smiled, pleased with her response, and reassured her that it would be an experience worth remembering. She spent the remainder of her shift in a whirlwind of activity, serving other customers while trying to process the incredible turn of events. Her thoughts raced, contemplating the upcoming trip, the people she would meet, and the lessons she might learn. She realized that this was more than just an opportunity. It was a validation of years of hard work, dedication, and the quiet discipline that had guided her life. Every early morning, every language lesson, every act of careful attention had prepared her for this moment. After the cafe closed, she lingered for a few moments, cleaning and tidying up, reflecting on the day. She thought about how much life could change in an instant, how small acts of courage, skill, and initiative could open doors that once seemed impossible. She felt gratitude for the challenges that had shaped her, the mundane routines that had honed her abilities, and the quiet determination that had allowed her to seize the opportunity before her. She knew that growth often came from unexpected moments, and she was ready to embrace it fully. That evening, she sat at her small desk, reviewing her Italian phrases and preparing for the upcoming trip. She imagined herself navigating new cities, engaging in conversations with confidence, and learning from every experience. The anticipation filled her with energy and focus, a determination to make the most of this rare opportunity. She understood that it was not just about the trip itself, but about the lessons she would carry forward, the connections she would build, and the ways in which she could expand her skills and knowledge. Sleep came eventually, but her mind remained alive with plans and possibilities. She dreamed of the new experiences awaiting her, of the people she might meet, and of the ways her life could evolve. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her efforts had been recognized, and that her future was no longer confined to the familiar patterns of her daily life. The ordinary cafe had become the starting point of something extraordinary, and she felt ready to embrace it with courage, grace, and curiosity. The next morning, she prepared herself meticulously, ensuring that everything was in order before leaving her apartment. She dressed carefully, mindful of the impression she would make, and reviewed her Italian one last time. Her heart raced with excitement as she made her way to the cafe, where the CEO awaited to escort her to the private jet that would take them on the short journey. The streets she had walked countless times before now seemed alive with possibility, every corner a reminder that life could shift in remarkable ways. Arriving at the cafe, she saw the sleek, black car waiting for her, and the CEO standing nearby, offering a friendly smile. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. This was a moment she had never imagined, a turning point that promised adventure, growth, and transformation. She stepped forward with confidence, letting go of doubt and embracing the unknown. As the door closed behind her and they drove toward the private jet, she felt the weight of the ordinary fall away, replaced by the exhilaration of a life expanding beyond limits she had once believed were fixed. The journey to the jet was filled with conversation, laughter, and glimpses into the world she had never known. She asked questions, listened attentively, and shared her thoughts with genuine curiosity. Every interaction reinforced her sense of possibility and her belief that preparation, skill, and confidence could open doors in ways she had never anticipated. The cityscape faded behind her as the jet waited, a symbol of the journey ahead and the extraordinary path that lay before her. The morning was crisp and bright, a perfect day for new beginnings. She woke with a flutter of excitement, the events of the previous days still fresh in her mind. The thought of boarding a private jet and traveling to a city she had never visited made her pulse quicken. She moved with deliberate care, getting ready, choosing her outfit thoughtfully, and rehearsing her Italian phrases one last time. The anticipation filled her with energy, and she felt a sense of purpose she had rarely experienced before. Arriving at the café, she saw the sleek car waiting, the CEO already standing nearby, greeting her with a warm smile. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and walked forward with confidence. Every step felt like a step into a world she had only glimpsed in her imagination. The journey to the airport was quiet at first, punctuated by small conversation. He asked her about her dreams, her ambitions, and the skills she had been cultivating. She shared openly, careful to articulate clearly, realizing that this was an opportunity to show not only her competence but her character. At the airport, the private jet gleamed under the morning sun. She couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as she approached it, the luxury and scale unlike anything she had encountered before. The CEO gestured for her to enter, and she stepped aboard, the soft hum of the engines and the quiet elegance of the interior making her feel simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. She took her seat by the window, gazing out as the city below slowly receded, leaving behind the familiar streets and buildings of her everyday life. As the jet ascended, she marveled at the view, the clouds stretching endlessly beneath her. She realized that this journey symbolized more than travel. It represented the chance to expand her horizons, to explore possibilities she had only dared to imagine. The CEO sat nearby, offering insights into the city they were visiting and the purpose of their trip. He spoke with clarity and warmth, making the experience feel accessible rather than intimidating. She listened attentively, absorbing every detail, her mind working to connect her existing skills with the new challenges she might encounter. During the flight, they discussed languages, culture, and the importance of seizing opportunities. She shared her experiences learning Italian, the discipline it required, and the joy it brought her. He encouraged her to continue pursuing her interests, noting how rare it was to meet someone so young with dedication and curiosity. His words were both inspiring and grounding, reminding her that talent combined with effort could lead to unexpected and meaningful outcomes. She felt a deep appreciation for the guidance and encouragement he provided, understanding that this journey was as much about personal growth as it was about business. As they approached the city, the skyline came into view, towering buildings casting shadows across bustling streets. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She reminded herself to stay present, to observe and learn, and to embrace each moment as part of a unique experience. The CEO briefed her on the upcoming meeting, explaining the context and the key participants. She listened carefully, absorbing the details, aware that her presence was not merely symbolic but could contribute meaningfully. She took notes discreetly, her pen moving quickly across a small pad, translating her thoughts into action. Landing smoothly, they exited the jet and were met by an assistant who guided them through the airport. She followed closely, observing the efficiency and precision with which every task was managed. It was a stark contrast to her life at the café, yet she felt surprisingly at ease, her prior experiences having prepared her to adapt quickly. She carried herself with a blend of humility and confidence, mindful of her actions and attentive to the cues of the environment. The journey from the airport to the meeting location offered her glimpses of the city's energy. People moved quickly along sidewalks, vehicles flowed in organized chaos, and the architecture spoke of history, innovation, and ambition. She felt inspired, imagining herself navigating this environment independently in the future. The CEO occasionally glanced at her, noting her reactions, and she realized that her curiosity, attention to detail, and willingness to engage were being observed and valued. Arriving at the meeting venue, she was introduced to several key individuals involved in the project. Her role was primarily observational, but she participated when appropriate, responding in Italian when needed, and demonstrating her linguistic skills and poise. Her ability to communicate effectively, coupled with her calm demeanor, drew subtle acknowledgement from the participants. She felt a quiet satisfaction, understanding that her preparation and dedication had placed her in this position of visibility and influence. Throughout the meeting, she remained attentive, taking in every discussion, noting the dynamics, and learning from the interaction. She recognized that this experience was an education in itself, a chance to observe leadership, strategy, and collaboration at a high level. The CEO occasionally engaged her in conversation, asking for her perspective on language and cultural nuances, which allowed her to contribute meaningfully without overstepping. She felt valued, respected, and encouraged to express her thoughts confidently. After the meeting concluded, they returned to the jet, and she reflected on the day's events. She realized that her life had changed in ways she had never anticipated. The confidence gained from interacting with such influential individuals, the exposure to new ideas, and the validation of her skills all contributed to a profound sense of growth. She understood that success was not merely a result of talent but of consistent effort, preparation, and the willingness to embrace opportunities when they arose. The morning was crisp and bright, a perfect day for new beginnings. She woke with a flutter of excitement, the events of the previous days still fresh in her mind. The thought of boarding a private jet and traveling to a city she had never visited made her pulse quicken. She moved with deliberate care, getting ready, choosing her outfit thoughtfully, and rehearsing her Italian phrases one last time. The anticipation filled her with energy, and she felt a sense of purpose she had rarely experienced before. Arriving at the café, she saw the sleek car waiting, the CEO already standing nearby, greeting her with a warm smile. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and walked forward with confidence. Every step felt like a step into a world she had only glimpsed in her imagination. The journey to the airport was quiet at first, punctuated by small conversation. He asked her about her dreams, her ambitions, and the skills she had been cultivating. She shared openly, careful to articulate clearly, realizing that this was an opportunity to show not only her competence but her character. At the airport, the private jet gleamed under the morning sun. She couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as she approached it, the luxury and scale unlike anything she had encountered before. The CEO gestured for her to enter, and she stepped aboard, the soft hum of the engines and the quiet elegance of the interior making her feel simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. She took her seat by the window, gazing out as the city below slowly receded, leaving behind the familiar streets and buildings of her everyday life. As the jet ascended, she marveled at the view, the clouds stretching endlessly beneath her. She realized that this journey symbolized more than travel. It represented the chance to expand her horizons, to explore possibilities she had only dared to imagine. The CEO sat nearby, offering insights into the city they were visiting and the purpose of their trip. He spoke with clarity and warmth, making the experience feel accessible rather than intimidating. She listened attentively, absorbing every detail, her mind working to connect her existing skills with the new challenges she might encounter. During the flight, they discussed languages, culture, and the importance of seizing opportunities. She shared her experiences learning Italian, the discipline it required, and the joy it brought her. He encouraged her to continue pursuing her interests, noting how rare it was to meet someone so young with dedication and curiosity. His words were both inspiring and grounding, reminding her that talent combined with effort could lead to unexpected and meaningful outcomes. She felt a deep appreciation for the guidance and encouragement he provided, understanding that this journey was as much about personal growth as it was about business. As they approached the city, the skyline came into view, towering buildings casting shadows across bustling streets. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She reminded herself to stay present, to observe and learn, and to embrace each moment as part of a unique experience. The CEO briefed her on the upcoming meeting, explaining the context and the key participants. She listened carefully, absorbing the details, aware that her presence was not merely symbolic but could contribute meaningfully. She took notes discreetly, her pen moving quickly across a small pad, translating her thoughts into action. Landing smoothly, they exited the jet and were met by an assistant who guided them through the airport. She followed closely, observing the efficiency and precision with which every task was managed. It was a stark contrast to her life at the café, yet she felt surprisingly at ease, her prior experiences having prepared her to adapt quickly. She carried herself with a blend of humility and confidence, mindful of her actions and attentive to the cues of the environment. The journey from the airport to the meeting location offered her glimpses of the city's energy. People moved quickly along sidewalks, vehicles flowed in organized chaos, and the architecture spoke of history, innovation, and ambition. She felt inspired, imagining herself navigating this environment independently in the future. The CEO occasionally glanced at her, noting her reactions, and she realized that her curiosity, attention to detail, and willingness to engage were being observed and valued. Arriving at the meeting venue, she was introduced to several key individuals involved in the project. Her role was primarily observational, but she participated when appropriate, responding in Italian when needed, and demonstrating her linguistic skills and poise. Her ability to communicate effectively, coupled with her calm demeanor, drew subtle acknowledgement from the participants. She felt a quiet satisfaction, understanding that her preparation and dedication had placed her in this position of visibility and influence. Throughout the meeting, she remained attentive, taking in every discussion, noting the dynamics, and learning from the interaction. She recognized that this experience was an education in itself, a chance to observe leadership, strategy, and collaboration at a high level. The CEO occasionally engaged her in conversation, asking for her perspective on language and cultural nuances, which allowed her to contribute meaningfully without overstepping. She felt valued, respected, and encouraged to express her thoughts confidently. After the meeting concluded, they returned to the jet, and she reflected on the day's events. She realized that her life had changed in ways she had never anticipated. The confidence gained from interacting with such influential individuals, the exposure to new ideas, and the validation of her skills all contributed to a profound sense of growth. She understood that success was not merely a result of talent but of consistent effort, preparation, and the willingness to embrace opportunities when they arose. During the flight back, the CEO engaged her in a discussion about future possibilities, suggesting projects where her language skills and organizational abilities could be applied. She listened eagerly, absorbing the information, and asked thoughtful questions, demonstrating her engagement and willingness to learn. He responded with encouragement, emphasizing that initiative, curiosity, and diligence were qualities that opened doors beyond what one could imagine. She felt inspired, motivated to continue developing herself, and grateful for the chance to prove her capabilities. Landing back in her city, she felt a mixture of relief and excitement. The familiar streets welcomed her, yet she saw them through new eyes, aware of the vastness of opportunity that existed beyond her routine life. She accompanied the CEO to the café, where she resumed her regular duties with a renewed sense of purpose. Each interaction with customers, each task completed, carried a new meaning. She recognized that the skills and confidence gained from her extraordinary experience could enrich even the simplest moments of her everyday life. That evening, she sat at her desk, reviewing notes from the day, practicing Italian phrases, and reflecting on the lessons she had learned. She understood that her journey had only just begun, that the private jet and the high-profile meeting were part of a larger narrative of personal and professional growth. She felt a sense of responsibility to continue striving, improving, and embracing opportunities that came her way. The ordinary life she had known seemed both distant and connected, a foundation from which she could launch into something remarkable. She fell asleep that night with a heart full of hope and determination. The experiences of the day had expanded her horizons, instilling a sense of confidence that she could carry into every future endeavor. She dreamed of possibilities, imagining herself traveling, learning, and contributing in ways she had never before considered. The journey had taught her that courage, preparation, and a willingness to embrace new experiences could transform her life in unexpected and profound ways. The next morning began quietly, with the soft light of dawn streaming through her window. She awoke with a mix of anticipation and reflection, her mind alive with thoughts of the previous days. The private jet, the meeting, and the conversations with the CEO had changed something deep inside her. She realized that life could shift in ways she had never imagined, and that her skills, determination, and willingness to embrace opportunities could carry her to places she had only dreamed of. She moved through her morning routine with a sense of calm and focus, carefully preparing herself for the day ahead. Even small tasks felt different now, infused with a new sense of purpose. Each action, from brewing her morning coffee to straightening her uniform, reminded her of the ordinary foundations that had allowed extraordinary moments to arise. She reflected on the months of practice, hard work, and quiet dedication that had led her to this point, feeling gratitude for her journey and the lessons it had taught her. Arriving at the café, she noticed the familiar rhythm of activity, yet it felt different. The space seemed alive with possibility, as if every table, every customer, held the potential for new experiences. She greeted the early patrons with warmth, her confidence radiating in subtle ways. Her coworkers noticed the change too, though no words were spoken. Her composure and poise were evident in every gesture, from carefully placing pastries on plates to engaging with customers politely yet warmly. It was a quiet but powerful transformation. As the morning unfolded, she prepared for the next part of her journey. The CEO had arranged for her to accompany him on a longer trip, one that would introduce her to a world far beyond the city she knew. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, but the underlying confidence that had grown in her over the past days provided steady support. She knew that the challenges ahead would require focus, adaptability, and grace, all qualities she had been cultivating through her daily routines and language practice. The sleek black car arrived to pick her up, and she stepped inside, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. The CEO greeted her warmly, his calm demeanor reassuring her. They spoke during the drive, discussing the purpose of the trip, the people they would meet, and the potential opportunities that awaited her. She listened attentively, asking questions when appropriate, demonstrating not only curiosity but also insight. The conversation flowed naturally, reflecting a balance between guidance and encouragement that made her feel valued and capable. At the airport, the private jet awaited, gleaming under the bright morning sun. She stepped aboard with a sense of awe and excitement, settling into her seat and taking in the elegance of the interior. The CEO joined her, and they engaged in conversation as the jet taxied down the runway and ascended into the sky. The city below shrank gradually, a patchwork of streets and buildings she had known intimately now receding beneath her. The perspective was breathtaking, both physically and metaphorically. She realized that the world was vast, full of opportunities she had never imagined. During the flight, they discussed culture, languages, and the importance of seizing moments of opportunity. She shared her experiences learning Italian, the discipline it required, and the satisfaction it brought her. The CEO encouraged her to continue developing her skills, emphasizing that initiative, dedication, and curiosity could create doors that seemed closed. She absorbed his words, feeling inspired and motivated. It was not just about the trip or the exposure. It was about understanding the value of preparation, perseverance, and courage. As they approached their destination, the skyline of a bustling city emerged below, the buildings reaching skyward in a testament to ambition and progress. She felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with nervous anticipation. This trip was more than a change of scenery. It was an immersion into a world of opportunity, a test of her adaptability, and a chance to grow beyond the familiar. She reminded herself to stay present, observe carefully, and embrace each moment fully, knowing that the lessons she learned here could shape her future. Arriving at the venue, she was introduced to several key individuals who played important roles in the project they were attending. She observed attentively, taking note of the dynamics, the flow of conversation, and the subtle cues of leadership and influence. Although her role was primarily observational, she was given opportunities to contribute, speaking in Italian when needed and demonstrating both her skill and her poise. Each interaction reinforced the realization that preparation and confidence could create meaningful impact, even in unfamiliar environments. Throughout the day, she engaged with people from diverse backgrounds, learning from their experiences and perspectives. She asked thoughtful questions, listened actively, and contributed when appropriate, recognizing the importance of being both present and proactive. The CEO occasionally guided the conversation, providing context and insights, but allowed her space to demonstrate her capabilities. She felt a growing sense of empowerment, understanding that her voice, skills, and perspective mattered. Between meetings, she took moments to reflect, jotting down notes and ideas, thinking about how she could apply the lessons she was learning to her own life and ambitions. The exposure to new ideas, strategies, and ways of thinking expanded her understanding of what was possible. She felt inspired to continue growing, knowing that the combination of skill, preparation, and courage could lead to opportunities she had never imagined. After the day's events concluded, they returned to the jet for the journey back home. She gazed out the window as the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink, orange, and purple. The experience had been transformative, providing insights, inspiration, and validation. She reflected on how far she had come, from the early mornings and long shifts at the café to the recognition of her abilities by someone influential and the exposure to a world she had only dreamed about. During the flight, the CEO discussed potential future opportunities, suggesting projects where her skills could be applied and further developed. She listened intently, asking questions and offering her thoughts with confidence. He encouraged her to pursue continuous learning, to remain curious, and to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. She felt motivated, understanding that the journey she had begun was just the start of a larger path that would require dedication, adaptability, and courage. Landing back in her city, she felt a sense of fulfillment and anticipation. The familiar streets welcomed her, yet everything felt different. She carried a newfound confidence, a deeper understanding of her abilities, and an expanded perspective on what life could offer. The experiences of the past days had shown her that even ordinary beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes when met with preparation, courage, and persistence. Returning to the café, she resumed her duties with renewed energy and purpose. Each task, from serving coffee to interacting with customers, carried a deeper meaning. She realized that growth was not only about high-profile experiences but also about applying lessons learned in everyday life. The ordinary and the extraordinary were connected, and she felt equipped to navigate both with skill and grace. That evening, she sat quietly at her desk, reviewing notes, practicing her Italian, and reflecting on the remarkable journey she had experienced. She understood that her life had shifted in profound ways, not only in terms of opportunities but in her own sense of self. Confidence, poise, and preparation had allowed her to seize a chance that might have been missed otherwise. She felt gratitude for the challenges she had faced, the skills she had cultivated, and the courage she had mustered to embrace the unknown. She fell asleep with a sense of hope and determination, dreaming of the possibilities ahead. She imagined future trips, new challenges, and opportunities to continue growing, learning, and contributing. The experience had taught her that life's potential often lies just beyond the familiar, and that moments of courage and preparation can open doors in ways that change the course of a lifetime. She felt ready to embrace whatever came next, confident in her ability to navigate a world full of opportunity, possibility, and growth.